Good evening, all. Thank you for joining us at the Hyde Park Planning Board's meeting of January 20th, 2021. I'll first note that this meeting is being held to the auspices of Governor Andrew Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, last extended as 202.87, which allows for virtual meetings of public officers. Let me first confirm that each board member is alone and not with anyone who might try to influence your decision or vote tonight. Ms. Weiser?
I am alone.
Ms. Wasser?
I am alone.
Mr. Pickett?
I am alone.
Mr. Oliver?
I am alone.
Ms. DiNapoli?
I am alone.
And Vice Chair Dexter?
I am alone.
Thank you. Let me first have us all join in saluting the flag of this great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for the extension of site plan deadlines to complete construction for carriage trails, also known to us as Crofton Mews. Can I get a motion to reopen the public hearing?
I make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion. Brent Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. Pickett. All in favor, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 Nays or abstentions? No, there being none, the public hearing is open. We are joined by several gentlemen tonight. Mr. Rudakoff, it's good to see you again after so many years. Mr. Rudakoff is a planning consultant representing the applicant, Mr. Kaufman, and One Key LLC. Also, I'm sorry, Elbow Creek LLC. There's a different entity owning this. So if you recall from our last meeting 6 months ago, we extended the public hearing to allow the applicants to sort of restart the process. Most of their permits have expired, and I think we were sort of expecting to see more permits, but instead we were sent a revised concept plan that I forwarded to all that basically reduces some of the density. In the meantime, we have new materials that have been submitted as well, but that's not the subject of tonight's public hearing. Nonetheless, Mr. Rudakoff, Mr. Kaufman, do you want to add anything to what I had to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have, one of the conditions before was that we certify the wetlands map, which we did, and that was submitted. That has, the wetlands have expanded a bit, and one phase, the last phase actually, was impacted. So we have submitted to you for your review a modification of the plan. We want to maintain most of the plan. We'll refresh all of these permits, but there's going to be less impact now because we are going to be reducing the 317 units to what appears to be, if the plan falls out right, about 249 units. So Mr. Rudakoff has been guiding us, and we're trying to put in place, trying to focus on what permits we need to refresh. And one of the things you had also mentioned at the last meeting was that the planning board wanted to guide the approval, that you preferred we get some feedback from the planning board before we pursue the DEC. So we are, obviously the times have created quite a barrier to moving forward at the speed we like, but we're moving forward now. And so we've given you what we're pursuing. We are going to firm that up a bit more, get some input from the planning board and the consultants. Have to have a meeting hopefully next week. And so that's where we are. We're going to need time to put this in place. I think you'll be very pleased with what we're going to come up with. I don't know if Mr. Rudakoff would like to add to that. That's my spiel.
Well, yes, I'd like to say, first of all, hello to you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, pleasure being before you again, and other members of the Hyde Park Board. And of course, your professionals who I've known and worked with for many years, Pete and Liz and Bonnie as well, and Victoria as well. So I'm looking forward to having this be a really informative and substantive, helping One Key make it a very informative and well-informed process. So where we are now is we would like to either have this extension approved or have the public hearing continued, following through on your current strategy for some amount of time. And we would expect that that amount of time, within that amount of time, there might be some thresholds identified that you would want the applicant to, have accomplished within this time frame, whatever it might be. And that it just strikes me that, with the town's planning board's willingness to sort of have this pre-submission meeting that's tentatively scheduled for next week, and with your consultants being there to discuss actually exactly the subject, which is the permitting, that it might make sense if the board was open to it, that that they might consider identifying what thresholds the town would want us to comply with at that meeting. So at the 27th, that could be a discussion topic. In other words, what things do we think we can get done in X number of months that would show responsible progress and allow us to keep moving? I know personally that since I've started working for Lou and George Brandt, that they've been very supportive, been pushing, coming into something like this and getting your arms around so many years of approvals and involvement takes a little time, and integrating it all. But now I think we've pretty well organized, and I think we'll have a very positive meeting. And that's what we'd like to do, either get the extension approved or have the public hearing continued, setting thresholds at this upcoming meeting.
Thank you both, and we look forward to working with you. I did send an email out to consultants and to the planning board members. I'm just waiting to hear back from them to see what time we should set it for on the 27th, but I think that would be the best and most productive way to proceed. Unfortunately, the size of the files that you sent, it just took me too long for them to download, and when I tried to blow it up, it became all blurry. So thank you, Mr. Kaufman, for sending paper copies to, I think it's Anne and Diane. There'll be 3 paper copies submitted for us before the meeting next week for our pre-app meeting. Also, I think I wrote to you in an email that I think it's hard for us to actually extend the time to complete construction if you don't have the permits needed to even start construction. So what we were prepared to do tonight was to extend this public hearing to April 21st. So that would give you time, give us both time to work out what needs to be submitted and how sort of chart a path forward, as you said. And I think we can identify what areas we need to sort of update seeker as fairly easily as well. Mm-hmm. But we do have a member. First, any comments from consultants on just us trying to do the extension? I didn't believe there would be. Or Tad, comments from you? Thank you. Any comments from the board? Again, this is just commenting on the time to complete construction, the hearing. Then I see Mr. Myers is here. Tom has been here through pretty much, for Ann and I, every time we've had a public hearing on this application. Tom has spoken. He represents more or less concerns from the Moose Lodge. Tom, can you unmute yourself and speak? There you go.
I'm unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I know the public doesn't say this much. I do want to thank all the board members for all the time they give to public service. I
Thank
do
you.
know how much time you volunteer. This is the 13th anniversary of the approval of this site plan.
This would be the last approval, yes, is the 13th anniversary. That's correct.
The last approved site plan, or the 25th anniversary of the project.
That is correct as well.
And you're here for another 2-year extension. Well, you're 2.5 year now. If you move it to postpone it, you'll have gotten 3 years out of the last 2-year approval. When would you feel it comfortable to say, why don't we start again to figure out what's going on?
In essence, I'm going to be honest with you, since you brought that topic up, I would love for them to withdraw the application, start anew, but I have a feeling that their investors might wig out, to put it politely. So, because in essence, we won't be starting completely anew, but we will be updating information in terms of seeker, because I think traffic may be impacted in a different way. We probably need to circulate this to DOT again because there were extensive improvements required by the Department of Transportation. And they're reducing density. When I say traffic impacts, everything is still going to be lower impact than what is before by the reduction of density. You just heard Mr. Kaufman say. But we will be looking to update a lot of the information that was relied upon way back when.
Okay, and don't get me wrong, I would love to see development back there. It's been a few days. But what I have reviewed online the plans from the 2007 approval. If I might have permission, may I talk to Mr. Sotero?
Of course.
Offline to discuss what I've seen in the plans that might need a little updating.
Peter?
I mean, sure, that's, fine with me, as long as it's acceptable to the board. I don't have a problem with it.
Well, that's why I was asking basically the board's permission if I could talk to you, Pete. Pete and I know each other
Yeah, we go back a ways.
always.
I'm fine with that. I believe the rest of the board is too. Anyone have any objections?
No.
Nope. Fine.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you very much.
Pete will keep us apprised of what the discussion is about, believe me.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, I say thank you very much. And again, to all the board members, thank you for your time.
Thank you and Happy New Year to you and Patricia. I haven't seen her in a while either, but it's good to see you.
Oh, right now for the last year, we've been keeping a very low, quiet profile.
Like all of us. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Krupnick, I don't believe anyone else signed up to speak about this application. Councilman Krupnick appears not to be here.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry. I thought I was unmuting myself and I wasn't. No one else is.
Okay, there being none, then just a reminder to the consultants and to Diane and Ann Weiser, please respond whether you want me to set this meeting up on the 27th for 11:30, noon, or 12:30. We have our agenda meeting at 10:30, and we have Hospice House is really all that's on it that I know of so far. If you think an hour is enough, we could start at 11:30.
Available.
Thank you. Just respond by email rather than now. And Mr. Rudikoff and Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Arico, I believe you want him here too. Oh, that's right. Our secretary just reminded we also have a new application for the SPCA. They're going to be amending their site plan. So I can already tell that it's probably going to be 12:30 before we'll set this meeting up because they're both going to take a while. Hospice House is a revised application. It's a fairly large one. And the SPCA is brand new to most planning board members. It'll be a matter of first impression, as they say in courts. So I'll get back, send you an email tomorrow to set up the time with a Zoom link. In the meantime, make a motion to adjourn this to April 21st.
I'll make the motion. Brent Pickett.
Thank you.
Hang on. I second that. Ann Weiser.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 Motion carries. You'll get an email from me tomorrow, Matthew and Lou. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, and good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Next application is a workshop. This is for Camp Victory Lake. As everyone knows, this is a rather large site located at the intersection of North Quaker Lane and Crum Elbow. The applicants were last before us back in January 16 of 2019. At the time, we had a very lively discussion on the architecture of the proposed sanctuary, which would be in phase 1. Also talking about a traffic study, which the applicants have now submitted. And there were various other issues, one of which I just want to raise tonight again, that Victoria Polidoro, our attorney, brought up about whether the lots would be consolidated where the northern lots are that are along Cardinal Road, because right now it would take a transportation corporation if you wanted to add those buildings to the central sewer system. Otherwise, the applicants have made a very complete application, at least in my opinion. This is going to have many, many, many phases. This is a master plan. The first phase would be a rather large religious sanctuary, a large structure. And for most board members, I hope you had a chance to see the latest sketch of the design that was done today, because I sort of admonished Their applicants, the representatives, Mr. Sander, that we might not hear comments unless we saw them, because I've learned the danger of speaking too soon sometimes. So with that noted, Mr. Sander, Mr. Rinia, all the rest of the team, Mr. Markowitz, et cetera, you're welcome to turn your cameras back on and unmute. You can take it away. Nice to see you all again.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, everybody. It's very good to see you. I hope everybody's healthy. It's been a long time. We were just before COVID hit last year. We were just kind of finishing up, waiting on getting that traffic study in, and then it hit, and it kind of threw everything off. But things being what they are, we're back in front of you, and we're happy to be here. And Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully, 2021 will be a good year. So starting out, I'll just run through. I have a little list here of everything we did submit, just for the record. We have a revised master plan set. There's 4 sheets with that. A revised phase 1 site plan set. There was 9 sheets with that. A revised project narrative, which is also our seeker narrative and seeker documentation. We provided a preliminary SWIP, the traffic assessment that we talked about that was completed by Creighton Manning Engineering. Our engineering report for the existing wastewater system and our engineering report for the existing water systems. So moving forward, I guess what we'll talk about tonight, we'll just kind of go over the master plan a little bit. And I think Peter is set to put that up on the screen if you'd like us to put the master plan up and share that. The master plan itself has not changed too much from what everybody saw before. There's a total of 14 phases in the master plan. And we are talking about ultimately approval, overall approval for the master plan, but then phase 1 approval. So as you can see, right where actually Peter has the hand there, the bottom right-hand side, that's the phase 1 area. So that's the proposed pavilion area. And then the downtown Victory Lake area is the area that's developed now. That is pretty much the heart and the soul of the master plan. The majority of everything is happening there. And then once we cross over on the other side of the lake and the stream, that becomes more of a environmental resource conservation type area. So there's camping there's our dirt bike track, ropes courses, those sort of things are going to be there. So that allows that area to stay pretty much wooded, and it's a low impact development side of it. And then, of course, we have a couple of parking lots hidden over there as well, too, just because we need the space for some parking. In the upper right-hand corner is the wellness center area. And that is located on separate lots right now. And I think the chairman had touched on that, and we can talk about that a little bit in the future as well, too. Or I'll talk about that tonight a little bit. And then they also had bought the other piece of property that's further over to the left. So that's been incorporated in. As far as the wastewater side of it goes, I think that's something that we figure out in future phases, because there is a breaking point when the existing wastewater treatment plant does have to be upgraded. So depending on future flows, say, for example, at the wellness center, if it's something that we can handle there and keep it as on-site treatment and keep it right on those parcels, that is a possibility versus upgrading the wastewater treatment plant. And I think we have to look at those costs, look at what kind of soils that we have. But I would definitely agree that if we are going to bring the wastewater, say, from the wellness center over to the main parcel, then I think it's probably going to be the easiest thing to do is to combine those parcels together. And then I don't know if anybody has any questions on the master plan itself. One of the other things that we've updated is, I know Liz had asked for, is to get more detail and more tables to break out everything that goes along with a master plan like this. So we've put the tables right on the master plan, so it's easier to follow, and it's part of the actual document, and it's not something hard to find in the future. Peter will just jump in and just run you through those tables quickly. Not that we're going to look at every single number in there, but he'll give you overview of all the information that's at least included on the master plan now.
All right. Hi, everyone. Peter Sander from Renia. So if you take a look at the tables, we'll just start from the top right corner or top left corner. The existing facilities to remain outlines all the existing facilities currently present on the site that we're planning on in keeping with it, the master plan development. Included in that is total footprint of the building, occupancy limits for them. I know it was discussed in previous comments that kind of break it out to see what the total capacity of the camp actually is. So that's why we ended up including all this. Next on the right is the proposed facilities. Again, this is just displayed by all the orange objects in the master plan. And being that it's a master plan and going to be done in phases, these are only estimates. Total occupancy for these structures will be developed on a phase by phase basis, but we wanted to give a general idea of where the camp capacity was going. Next, we'll move on to the parking area data, and it's just a breakdown of the parking lots and potential surface covers. Again, some of these will not be constructed as part of phase 1, but in subsequent phases. So again, just trying to get a general idea of where that would go. Next was vehicle and pedestrian road data, included in part of that initial comment letter we received a few years ago. They wanted a breakdown of materials and square footages. So again, that's what we were trying to provide in that. Land use covers, which is right here in the bottom part, is just a breakdown of how the EAF was structured, where it discussed land covers. And again, being a master plan, it's just more of a general estimate of what we're assuming will be the ultimate land cover. Proposed development summary is just kind of breaking down some of the key figures that we are expecting. And then if you take a look at the bulk regulations, that is existing bulk regs for the site, considering where all the buildings are that are close to the property line, where's the surface or the percent impervious coverage. So again, that's just kind of a breakdown of what we were thinking, and just to provide a speedy way to look something up really quick.
So it's basically a lot of EAF data and future data is planted right on the master plan. So it's fully documented right there. I don't know if there's any board questions on the master plan.
So, Richard, the way this works is I'll call on each consultant, each planning board member. It's been a while, I know, since you've been before us.
Yes.
Yeah,
we want to cover a lot of this tonight, but we don't refresh everybody's memory, but not necessarily, I guess, bore everybody to death with every little detail either.
Oh, no. Remember you're before what they would call a hot board, or like a hot bench in the court, meaning the board, my colleagues pretty much read everything that's submitted, I can guarantee you.
Yeah,
There's
great.
some new board members since you were here last as well. Ms. Wasser, I believe, who served on a planning board in Massachusetts where she was actually the chair. We're very fortunate to have her as well to join us. I first want to thank you for being so responsive to the comments you heard almost 2 years ago now. Well, actually 2 years almost exactly to now. This was a very thorough application, as I said. We had our agenda meeting last Wednesday, and Ms. Axelson has issued a memo that incorporated all the comments that we discussed internally amongst ourselves and through there. And I believe that you've received that, so I'm going to let her go over some of that she thinks is the most salient. But again, when I first saw this way back when, I thought it was exciting. And I just was recalling that I believe I first met you guys maybe back in 2007 initially, or 2006, somewhere in through there. I was sort of brand spanking new, and we were just beginning to discuss the idea of a master plan on this. And I know that the Northeast Conference had to raise money, save money, et cetera. But just to refresh everyone's memory, I believe at the time that you told me this was the largest property that the conference owns in 5 states. And that's why this was chosen to be kind of the site of this big master plan and this very exciting project. So I look forward to seeing it developed. I'm not sure I'll be here by the time the last building is done. But in the meantime, I also just wanted to say that I appreciate you putting all this data on a table. One of the problems with the last application, if you heard about it, Carriage Trails or Crofton Mews to us, is that it indeed started 25 years ago. And we're into the double digit or double letters of alphabets for resolutions. We don't really have clear data on it. It's been difficult to try to process it through. And I can guarantee you that when you have applications that may run for a long time like this through 14 phases, the clearer you start, the better it's going to be for future planning boards, future zoning administrators, et cetera. So it'll just speed the process, in other words, down the line. So let me start by calling on our first consultant, Ms. Axelson.
Michael, can I
Yes.
interrupt us for a second?
Sure.
Do we want Rich to go through some of the details for the first phase?
Sure.
Yeah, what we were going to do is just run you through, put up the phase 1 site plan.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we do that before we get, because I'm sure some of our comments are going to cover.
Just do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then we want to run you through the initial thinking on architectural and definitely get the board's feedback on that.
Great.
Sure.
Good.
Okay, so up on the screen now is the phase 1 site plan. So I think this is generally what we had all talked about at the last time. If you recall, this pavilion building on the original master plan wanted to be on the other side of the lake, kind of more hidden in the woods. But the Blandings Turtle has decided that it may potentially want to use that area. So the building, we all talked about where would be a good spot to bring the building. And working with the board, it was kind of general consensus that this is our corner here to work with. And we're kind of have our backs up against the wall or the building up against the road here. And that's something we want to talk about on the architectural side as well too. But so we have due to not having many other places for the building, but we've backed the corner closer to the road so we could have parking behind into the side of it. And then there's an existing parking lot closer to the road that would go away in this particular layout. The other thing that you see in this layout that's new for the board is the main entrance has been moved about 85 feet from where the existing entrance is now. So we've moved it up the hill a little bit closer to the intersection, about 85 feet. And that was as a result of the traffic study, and it finds that we have better sight distance for the driveway. So that's something that's new with this provision or with this revision as well too. But other than that, I think it's pretty much the same as what everybody remembered that they last saw. And so when you come into the main entrance, we would get traffic right into the pavilion area. The first parking lot that you see would slope upwards, and the drop-off area would be at a higher level than the lower parking lot in the back. It's about a 15-foot difference. So that's how we were trying to take the lower half of the building or the auditorium side of it and try to use the higher height, the elevation that's near the intersection, and use that to our advantage to try to hide part of the building. But the building itself has 2 levels to it. So the parking lot at the top of your screen, that's a lower parking lot. It's about 15 feet lower, which also puts it lower. It's better to grade around the lake that way too. And we have our stormwater down there as well. Some different stormwater practices that we're looking to use on this particular project are bioretention, dry swales. We have a small pond, and then we have another dry detention pond. But we're trying to incorporate our green infrastructure right into the parking lots, and trying to make that part of the parking lot and also part of the landscape as well too, and just try to reduce impacts overall with the stormwater plan on the project. So I think that's pretty much it on the site plan.
Hey, Rich, if you could just talk a little bit about the buses and the drop off and the parking lot for the buses and.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Pete. That was the other thing that we had many discussions with the board about, was how are we going to get the people here? Obviously, there's not enough parking spaces right at the building for everybody that potentially could be housed in the building. So what we came up with was that we needed a place to be able to have buses drop off. So the radiuses have been designed so buses can pull up to that front area, drop people off. And the concept that we're looking at here, and will be further expanded by the architectural team, is basically a patio on either side. So we have the long drop-off area. They're talking about having a portico over that as well too, so people can get out of cars, get out of buses. But then groups of people could get out of a bus and they could stand on the patios on either end, or gather groups of people and call them for buses. That's part of the thinking here too. That when we're doing a building of this size, where do we kind of stage the people? So that's being thought of here as well too. So the buses would pull up, drop off, they could leave, and then they can go down, and we've provided parking down near the wastewater treatment plant. So the buses can go down there, park, and then they can come back, and you won't see those where the buses are parked from the road at all.
Just to demonstrate the route, it would be to come through here, drop off, come down the road, and then make your way back towards this parking lot over here. So that is what's depicted in this plan right here.
Describe the road surfaces as well, back to the parking area for us.
What was that?
Can you describe the proposed road surfaces that will take buses all the way back to the parking area?
Yeah, so the existing surface right now is there's a paved road, and then we're proposing the bus parking area as a gravel area. So we're not adding, we didn't think it was necessary to add more pavement back there. And then all the parking areas here, we're looking at being an asphalt type of pavement, a hardscape type material, just because of it has to be durable to hold up.
And do you want to go ahead and show the architectural sketches?
Yeah, I thought that's what we would jump to next.
Right.
And this is being worked on by SMA Architecture. Stu Markowitz he is the principal. So this view that we're looking at here is from that upper parking lot. And this would be looking at the entry area with the portico that I was talking about. So the idea would be that buses and cars would pull under that portico, do their dropping off there, and then exit.
And then moving down to...
So now this would be the view from the road intersection. Of course, there's no trees in this. So this would be if the landscape was completely bare, which it's not. But this is the idea of what it could look like from the corner. And from this particular angle, one thing we talked about with Stu and Ken is, should this building maybe be slid a little bit further to the north, so it doesn't feel like the roof is right in the ground. The landscaping, the existing trees will break that up some, but they're trying to make it, even though this isn't going to be a main access point from this side, they're trying to make the building be a good looking building from all four sides, and not just make the piece that's in the back by the road this uglier structure, or just kind of like a square corner of a building and a piece of flat roof. So that's the discussions that we're having right now. Maybe we should try to slide this forward towards the lake a little bit, and then figure out, we'd lose some parking there, but then on our end, we try to figure out another spot to move some of that parking to.
We have some sections that will maybe show that a little better for you.
So we'll move down to the view from the other lane.
Yeah, so this would be coming from the north end of Quaker Lane and looking up, and once again, along the road, there is existing landscaping, and we're proposing a significant amount of evergreen landscaping. But this would be looking at the lower side that I was talking about. That's about 15 feet lower than where the drop-off area is.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's 3 levels in certain parts of the building.
Yeah, it's 2 levels, but the center area, the auditorium area, has got to have a much higher ceiling so you can have lighting and for the acoustics. So that's that center area you see in the top. And that's basically, it's all airspace there. There's not actually, like the windows that you see, nobody would actually be able to stand there and look out. There might be some catwalks up there, but the lower windows that you see below the lower roof line, there's 2 levels of windows. Those are actually areas where people would be, that's the pedestrian friendly levels, if you would, where people are going to be walking around those levels.
Here, we can show you the section view, which kind of depicts this a little better. Again, here's another elevation from the parking lot portion, kind of giving you a better sense of that pedestrian area in the courtyard. And then we'll continue over to here where the section view really kind of depicts the grade and everything that's kind of going on in that portion.
So, and this is a diagonal cut through the intersection to the northwest. And this is the condition that Rich was talking about. You can see the lower roof on the left side. You can point that out, Peter. Yeah, that, and you can see the relationship of that to the road, and you'll actually be looking down on the roof. And we thought that was, felt a little claustrophobic.
Are you talking about the Crum Elbow and Quaker Lane intersection?
Yes, that's right. That's the intersection we're talking about. Yes. So the intersection elevation is over on the left side of this drawing, and those rectangles that you see just to the right of the roadway are the transformers that you probably have seen before, just driving there. And so with the building pulled this far to the south, you are kind of looking down on the roof. And we thought it was a little bit tight for the building. If we shove the building to the north just a little bit, we would get a little bit of breathing room from that slope, and still we'd be planting all along that intersection, so that it wouldn't be if we. I mean, I think it's a good idea to have fire access on that side too, but whether there was some minimal parking there or not, we would. I don't think that would be. We would make sure that wouldn't be seen from the road, but you would see more of the building, so it wouldn't feel like it was slammed up against the hill.
Just to briefly show you what we're kind of thinking is that if this building were to move in this direction, giving us a little more space between the intersection, which would allow us to have be a little more visible, so it wouldn't be right up against the ground over on this side.
How far are you talking about moving it?
Right now, we're just in discussions. We kind of wanted to get initial feedback from you guys and see where you guys thought about us possibly moving it this way or moving it a little further north.
Can you show that one more time?
Yep.
With the arrow, where you were going to move it?
So we want to slide the structure up to this portion, so it gets a little further away from this higher grade over here, and it gives you a little better view of the roof line.
Move due north.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're thinking maybe we're talking or thinking 20 to 30 feet, somewhere in that range. We're not thinking very far, but it might be just the roadway width to move it forward, but just enough to just get it out of that grade a little bit.
Approximately around here, this midway to this roadway. That's about 30 feet or so.
It's hard to tell looking at this from a top global view. It's almost to the point I'd like to see it staked out and then, have a walk and just to see how it fits. With the rheology that I know is in the area, it's hard to see how something like this would fit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and I think we could definitely accommodate that.
Actually, as long as you're discussing the location of the building right now, there's one question that I'd like the board to weigh in on. In the comment memo from my office, one of the things that we point out is the issue of the parking. I believe it's on the north side or in the back, as you say.
Yep.
Having that, okay, so I'm sorry, I'm losing my sense of direction here, but I think it's this, yes.
North.
So the concept is to have the parking, according to the code, line up with the building line at a minimum, or be behind it, in this particular context, you've designed the site to try to put more of the intensive stuff in, south of Victory Lake, and have the less intensive stuff sort of north of that whole Victory Lake and stream area. So I really appreciate that kind of design. And I guess the question for the board is, if this is a standard that the board can consider varying, is the parking the way it is right now acceptable to you, or would you like to see it moved back so that that longest row that's closest to the road would be moved back to be on the building line? Now, they would lose a lot of parking in order to do that, but that's kind of a input from the planning board sort of item that I think is important to deal with in this workshop.
I'll ask each member to weigh in on that. And I don't believe it's waiving the requirements so much as it's relaxing the standard. All standards can be relaxed by the planning board based on unique circumstances of each site. In this site, as you can see, there are various environmental constraints around this entire site. It's a little bit of a challenge to get everything in there. I'll also remind the board that when we last saw this, one of the reasons why we took a look for this building was not just because to preserve the free movement of endangered species possibly along that stream corridor. It's also because you saw from with the height of the ground, when you're actually driving down Crum Elbow, part of this would be obscured, and it's a very large structure. So that was part of it too, was that the height in that ground level, the grade change would provide some potential screening. I will also add that back when we saw the original building, we might have thought it needed to be screened more because it wasn't as attractive as I think it is now. But I'll also let the board weigh in on that when we go board to board.
Very attractive building.
Rich, is there anything else you and Peter want to point out right now?
Yeah, I think just to tag on what Liz was saying in that parking area that she was directing the board at, one thing that I would like to point out that is below Quaker Lane. It is significantly lower in elevation. And one of the things we were trying to do was, if the lower we got that parking lot, the more we can hide it. So our whole goal here is to try to hide the parking lot, because we still want to keep that country feel to the roads when you drive through there.
That's an important consideration for the board.
And you have proposed landscaping along there as well.
Yes, landscaping. And like I said, we're, trying to wrap that parking lot with our green infrastructure and use that to help us as well too.
Also like to point out that this area is actually up on a much higher hill. So even on this portion this primary parking lot will also be largely blocked by the existing grade. So.
Two quick things before we get into the details. Rich, is this going to be a year-round facility?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The pavilion. Yes, definitely.
Okay. And then
they're going to make a significant investment in this. So I know that they're going to want to definitely get regular use out of it. And I think what we had talked about with the board was, they're going to have certain large events that they hold every year. So I think we were talking around 3,000 people that could be in the building.
Okay. All right.
Around that level. But what I think that they'll do with this building is there will be a lot more of smaller events, whether it be 300 or 400 people or 500 people type events that they will be able to hold in here on a more regular basis, but definitely a year-round facility.
Okay. And then the other thing, talking about maybe shifting the building a little bit. Have you had any preliminary discussions with the fire department?
We did not, but we were thinking if we shift that forward, then like what Stu had mentioned is that gives us the ability to bring a fire lane in. So then we'd actually be able to give the fire department access to 3 sides.
Yeah, I would probably say you should get, as you're talking about maybe making some changes, I think it might be good to meet with them sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Just to see what their needs, might be as far as access around the building. Obviously, maybe they would say, hey, we got access off of North Quaker Lane if we needed it. But again, it's not like our area of expertise. So, just when you're kind of tucked into, the corner there, we always kind of look at, like as you do, fire access around, the building. So that might be a good idea to meet with them sooner than later.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. We'll get that done.
Okay,
And
thanks.
the New York State Fire Code, I believe, works in concert with the building code as to what the requirements are. The fire department usually asks for more than is required. So just keep that in mind, because the building department is very clear about what is required by code.
Okay.
Take a moment to note here that this is a place of assembly, so we will assume it's going to be sprinklered under the building code.
Yes.
In addition, if you're planning on having an exterior water tank, that should be shown. I don't know if you need that, but sometimes in kinds of places like this, we've had interior tanks. We've also had exterior tanks, and that would be required to be shown on the site plan.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking that in this particular facility, that having something buried is going to be our best option here.
Yeah, well, we'll need to see that on the plan. That was a good point, Michael. Thank you.
Also, to remind the board, particularly Stephanie, so the reason why that we are doing seeker on this was we asked the applicants to sort of imagine what would be we'll call it the best case scenario for the applicants, meaning what would it be if this were entirely built out and you had sort of everything functioning at one time? So that's sort of the process we're following. I'll also note, though, that as Peter said, it may be that as various phases go through the site plan process itself, we may need to reopen seeker if they change something sort of radically from what we're reviewing here tonight, but I don't think that's going to be the case. That's why we asked them to do what they've done. And again, we didn't get to the point of circulating last time for lead agency or even starting the seeker process because we didn't have enough information to go with. I believe Liz is going to address that we're not quite ready yet based on some limitations in the traffic impact study. So let me turn it over to you, Liz. Do you want to start?
Sure. Couple things. First of all, I just have to laud this group for, for planning ahead and trying to look at this site redevelopment as just full of exciting potential. And that being said, I think it's worth it to think about what would your maximum usage be. I guess, you'll want some feedback from the board. We see different numbers based on those tables. I realize that when you did the tables of, for example, that show the occupancy for the different buildings and facilities, that you probably didn't intend for those to be added up. But the thing is that if you're serving a big population here, it's possible there may be more than one event happening at a time. So I guess I would urge you to really think about that. The other thing that Pete and I kind of agree on is that considering the potential use of the sanctuary and the site, the primary road, and again, I'm going to the master plan sheet, the primary road where the bus is going to go out. I can't remember the name of the road. Okay, the bus, it's the one that goes to the north of the amphitheater, that big spine, and then, continues. It's number 24. And my feeling about that is that is going to serve a lot of facilities, including that bus parking area. It's kind of it's like a spine of the site. And Pete and I looked at it, and my gut tells me that probably should be paved. Should be a two-way road and should be paved. Even the bus parking area should be paved. I realize you're trying to be sensitive with your surface there because it's north of the lake and the creek. But I feel like you want to be able to accommodate buses, emergency vehicles, service vehicles, and also to some degree, because there's a large parking area over on the other side of the site, if you have overflow, is it 3? I'm sorry, I didn't think I'd need my glasses. Is that 3J?
3J, yep.
3J.
Okay,
3J.
so there's a potential there to use that parking area as overflow, so that you could avoid using the grassed one that is south of it, that's more on the road. So I guess I'm just looking at that back road, number 24, as giving you the potential to have a really stable, durable, two-way road that's going to serve plenty of facilities and allow people to go into the back of the site and maybe park in sort of an overflow area. So I think that's worth some serious consideration, even though I realize you were trying to be environmentally sensitive there. And let's see, I know I had some other things that I wanted to bring up. Going back over to the sanctuary, there is sort of a, you can stay on this map. There's a shared, okay, there you go.
Oh.
It looks like there's some kind of there's an existing driveway for the dwelling that's right near the road. Then there seems to be some kind of a driveway east of that also goes out to the road. And
Right there,
the
yeah.
recommendation we have is to merge those if possible to eliminate another intersection in that area.
Okay, those are
Have you
those are
spoke
two
to the
existing-
county on that, Rich?
Right. Yeah, those are two existing driveways right now. So right where you look on the screen where it says mechanical equipment enclosure, where those the text is, there's an existing old asphalt parking lot in there right now. So that's an existing driveway that goes into that parking lot. And we would have no problem with combining the two of those. The other one is a driveway to the existing house. What we were showing in this particular layout was if all the mechanical equipment is going to be in the back, it goes downhill, that we thought that the service people would need some sort of an entryway or an access to actually physically get back there. So that's what we were showing here.
Got it. Got it. That makes good sense.
Well, the county will be the one that'll determine, the driveways that they're gonna, allow out there. So when this goes over to the county, that's gonna be part of what they'll look at too.
Right.
And then the other issue that we came up with that shows up in the master plan with all those wonderful tables, where you gave us a very comprehensive concept of what your plans are, was that there are some places where it's not clear how many people can fit in the sanctuary, for example, and also the special event being 5,000 people, but the potential capacity of the site could be much larger than that with the facilities proposed. And again, not discouraging that personally. This is a great site. I realize it has a large region that it is serving. So, and I think the traffic engineer from our office also had the same feeling, like try to get clear on what your master plan is. What's your typical case? What's your medium case? What's your worst case? And try to plan for that. Because if it is possible to hold larger events, or one 5,000 person event and another 1,000 person event, and you've got the ability with that paved road and bus parking area to be able to drop people at different parts of the site, and then have the bus, go away and come back later. So really think that through, because it would affect your site planning and capacity, and also your traffic. But if you're going to this much trouble to do this master planning, I would definitely recommend that be given some consideration. If you're shooting for the sky.
One thing I'll just add in on that there is a bit of, I guess, coming to a realization for the conference that there's only so many people that they could physically handle on the site, and that they could actually want to keep track of. So we have had some of those discussions with the conference as well too.
Good.
That shooting for the sky to a certain degree, that they're shooting for something big here, but they also realize that there does get to a point where they wouldn't be able to manage it, so they don't want it to get too big. But that 5,000 number that we've kind of always thrown out there is something that they feel is a real number, and it is a little bit hard to predict for the future, but we are trying to look at, we look at these buildings and say, well, the building code, you could have this much occupancy in each of the buildings, but then we realistically have to look at it too and say, well, what's the reality? How many people could they actually invite for an event? And the way that the conference works is because there's so many different churches within the conference, and they're spread out across 5 different states. Not everybody's going to come to one. There's some different themes to the different events that different groups would more so certain groups would want to come to some, and certain ones want to focus on other ones. And then individual churches can just come here and rent out space to do something for themselves too, as far as a retreat. So there's so many different uses. So one thing we did try to look at is the high end, the low end, but then the realistic end of what we think when there's just kind of normal business here. And then there could be things that we don't know, but they're in between. So we were trying to focus on get the high numbers. But I do understand what you're saying is don't shoot yourself in the foot by going too low. I think that's what you're saying, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, and the board can weigh in on this also, but the whole point of the concept we had for the environmental review for this was, let's try to do this generic fully AF expanded review, see if the board can get to the point where they're comfortable making a secret determination on the larger master plan and site redevelopment, and also the phase 1. And then as you move forward, hopefully you'll have done enough planning and enough of the environmental review that each time you come back with a phase, you won't have to go through all this. That's the concept anyway.
Right.
That brings up a quick point about the traffic impact analysis. You relied more on information from the Northeast Conference individuals, those who lead it, to kind of get an idea. But we're used to seeing ITE numbers in there too. And when this goes off to Department of Public Works, they might be asking also for a more standard analysis in there. So one of the suggestions, I believe that's in Liz's memo, is that you have the traffic analysts add in the standard ITE values. That way we are sort of looking at, again, I'll call the best case scenario for you guys, in case that later on in the future, if you could do a better job, or if they could handle sort of crowd control, I'll call it, that you might have a really, really busy site at some point. Again, I think that this is, I want to point out, particularly for Ms. Wasser, that having lived here for 27 years, and that was the path that I always took when I went back and forth to the city, was Crum Road. I recall in the summer seeing a lot of people there, and I've never, ever seen any kind of traffic issues whatsoever. I'm aware that the applicants always inform the Hyde Park Police, et cetera, when they're going to have those kinds of big events. And I also, from my notes, reread that that these kinds of events might be open to local people as well. So all of that needs to be factored in through there. At any rate, Liz, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You can continue.
No,
please.
you added in the point about the traffic study and you simplified it, made it make more sense. I think the other thing that our traffic engineer was saying is, obviously, this group has been running this site for a long time and they may have a better idea. So when you see the side-by-side ITE numbers, even if it's a shared use thing, they may look bizarrely ridiculous, and it'll shed some light on how much closer the reported traffic is to reality. So that'll be very helpful. And I know I had one more thing, but I feel like I'm overstaying a little bit here, and it'd be very interesting to hear from the board. I think at this point, those are our main things. Pete, am I missing any other general points?
I just want to hit on a couple things, really, really quickly, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but so I did talk to Rich last week about some of the items here. He and I are working on a bunch of projects together. Liz had mentioned about the two-way access from the phase 1 site over to the bus parking area. So I know Rich is going to look at that. We do think that in the future that, the spine road there should be a two-way road. I think the fire department, would want that anyways. So, but again, some of that is going to be for future, phases. So, the other thing I just wanted to mention quick, and the reason why I asked if this was going to be a year-round, facility, which I assumed it was going to. But in the Peter, if you could just pull up the detailed site plan for phase one. Thanks.
Mhm.
So if you go to the northern parking lot there that you guys were talking about before, so you wouldn't see it here on this plan, but on the grading plan, there are no catch basins in the parking lot, and the high point where it would flow from south to north is kind of the area where the access drive to the parking area intersects with the drive to the front of the building. Peter, if you could just go, right there.
Mhm.
Yeah, right around in there. Yep. So from that point all the way to the north is basically going to be sheet flow drainage, which is, I think we said it was around 450 feet of sheet flow. And I understand why, Rich in his office, designed it like that because of, the grades of the site, wanting to slope down to the north as quick as possible, but also because the type of stormwater that he's using as far as the sand filters. If you did have a storm drainage system in the parking lot, the elevations of the subsurface drainage system wouldn't match with the sand filter. But anyways, those are like details. So, the point is that in the winter time, with that long of a sheet flow, you may get some icing issues as, the snow banks, will melt. And then it, during, the evening portion, like it freezes. So, I don't know that there's a specific answer to that other than like redesigning it, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think the town has any liability, but I just wanted, to point that out that that's probably not the best condition to have sheet flow that is that, long of a length. And even during like a rainstorm, it's probably a little uncomfortable for people walking from the parking lots to the building. But, again, it's like a private site, but, we do have to go and balance, approving a plan that's, going to be safe for people that are going to be using the facilities. So Rich, I don't know if you have anything that that's something that we can work on, but I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think like when we had talked about it, my thinking is in the center. I mean, the longest run would be going from left to right from where the entrance road comes down and drops into the parking lot. So my thinking is if we take that upper square that's right above the building, and then I look to have some sort of receptors in there, and I have some ideas. Number one, there's 4 different islands there. We could maybe expand those islands a little bit, but set those lower. Maybe we look at doing something curbless there with like a stone diaphragm around them, and then we actually let that be some sort of a practice. Maybe those could be bioretention islands.
Yeah.
So they're more sunken in, and we collect water there. Or one of those long rows of parking areas where they're face-to-face parking, like where you see the 15 and the 15 opposing each other. I actually try to open those up and get a sand filter strip or get something in between there, revise the grading, but basically take that whole upper square area and get some other receptor in there and still achieve what we're trying to do. But then if I get it into a sand filter or into a bioretention, then I can from there take the larger storm events into a yard drain and pipe them out of there and still get over to the upper corner where the dry detention would be.
Okay.
And your drive aisles can be 24 feet instead of 26, so that may give you wiggle room.
Okay.
All right, so we'll work together on that. So, the last thing before I turn it over to, the board and is, we are going to look to do seeker on the master plan. So I looked at the overall concepts for that Rich had in his report for stormwater, water, and sewer. Rich already talked about, the sewer. I thought that the report said that all the phases could be like accommodated, but again, that's something that's going to go through the health department like process. So it's obvious that there's extra capacity in the sewer plant. And so the only thing that I wanted added to the water report is just to, to say that there'll have to be pump tests done on the various wells that are at the site there now, and that there's a possibility that there may be additional wells that may be added to meet the peak, water demand. I'm not sure, Rich, I'm not sure where you got your well yields from. Was that just historical data?
Yeah, it was data provided to us. Yeah, we foiled the health department records and then from their existing water operator.
All right. I mean, they're going to go make you do,
PRI operates for them.
yeah, I mean, they're going to go make you do new pump tests, I assume, and and all that. So we just wanted to put that in the report, just to have it. And then as far as the drainage goes for the master plan, we have enough information. Rich showed where there could be conceptual stormwater practices to handle some of the future phases. And obviously, as those phases come before the board, the drainage for those phases will become more detailed. But for purposes of seeker, I think we have enough information to move ahead whenever that time comes. So overall, I think that the plans are in really good shape, and we'll work together with Rich's office on that. So that's really what I have to add at this.
Thank you, Mr. Sotero. I have one other point. If you can go back to the phase one detail. I believe that you were thinking that the area where there's a stormwater practice that's right to the east of that front parking. No, it's in right there.
Yeah.
There's some, I think, Peter had some questions about whether people would just sort of march right through that.
Well, that's a sand filter. So yeah, there'll have to be a couple of access ways or one access way.
Right.
We don't want people with tramps through the stormwater practice, Tad, right? Oh, maybe she's muted.
Yeah, I was muted, sorry.
Oh, all right. I'm thinking of you, Tad. We got to go look out for the stormwater practice.
I know, we don't want people walking through those. We've had a couple other sites where they've done that.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of minute at this point.
Yeah.
But I did want to point it out because I think you do need to provide some access points in through there. It just would be more sort of common sense for people to have a focal point to go to walk across.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have something central there. When the architects showed us the plan with the portico on it, I think that's really nice. So I think we'll end up coming up with something that continues right across there. And that was, I think we're thinking bioretention there. So we could look at maybe planting plants that have thorns on them, and we'll keep people out.
Oh,
Why don't we just put some barbed wire up in there?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think that sounds very accommodating to walk into a sanctuary. That noted, thank you, Mr. Sotero. Ms. Moss, any comments from you?
yes, I just want the applicant to keep in mind that there's a 100-foot corridor, stream corridor on either side of the stream bank that is to remain undisturbed. So you may need some variances should you be within 100 feet of the stream corridor, of the stream banks.
Yeah, good point, Tad.
Okay.
But we're experts now, right, Tad, on those
Yeah.
100-foot variances, right?
Yeah. Zoning board has been dealing with those almost exclusively for a couple of months.
And as a reminder to the board, that's actually the stream corridor staying in undisturbed state is pretty much in the definitions of the code in terms of the lack of disturbance. And it's meant to allow the free movement of basically animals, et cetera, as well as to protect the actual stream banks themselves.
So that setback needs to be added to the plans, the line.
Yeah.
I was just going to call on you, Ms. Polidoro. Any other comments besides adding the setback?
Yeah, so I think, Michael and Liz did a really good job of explaining how the seeker process is going to work on the master plan, with then the various pieces coming in later. I do agree that we need some kind of best case or worst case number, so we know what we're doing the seeker review on, and anything above that would trigger additional review. One thing that I didn't see that the board might find useful is a large event management plan for some of the larger events. It would provide information on how they would be circulating, maybe provide numbers in case of emergencies that the event manager would be able to call, and that the town would be able to call if there was someone that needed to be contacted. I think we did that with one of the event spaces, rural event venues that we were looking at. So that's something. Oh, sorry.
I think, Rich and Peter, that if you look under our code under rural events, we passed a law, so the town board, I should say, passed a law so that people who have larger properties can do big weddings, things like that. And it details out what would go into the event plan. It's not anything too onerous. It's just so many days to notify the police, the fire departments ahead of time. Okay. Things like that. That's about it. But it's a good idea.
It would only be for the large events. I mean, the day-to-day stuff, no, but maybe something, everything over, 1,000 or whatever threshold the board thinks is appropriate.
Right. And what we've done on other projects in the past, I know Victoria has seen some other stuff we've done where we've put together a template where we said, here's a template for this project for their large event management plan. And then given whatever event that they're given, that they can start with that template. And there's some open areas in there where they can fill in the blank, so to speak, of what this particular event's going to be or how many people it might be. But everything is in there. They can kind of follow through. We have to notify this people or that people. I think we found that to be helpful, and we just made that part of the project documents.
Mm-hmm. This is very big picture right now, but as you move forward, you will have to identify all of the waivers or modifications that you'll need from the zoning law, like the light fixtures and the lack of landscaping and the parking. But we have time for that. I just have a question. What are these round things in between the cabins?
Those are stormwater practices.
Okay. So are the existing cabins, and then I know that there are some other cabins down on the other side of the parking lot, are those all already hooked up to the wastewater treatment system?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess Peter could pull up the grading plan. He could probably get that up here, and that shows utilities.
Okay. And that's it for now. Once we get the additional information, the board can authorize circulation.
Thank you, Victoria. Let me start with Ms. Wasser. I'm going to start with you because you haven't had a chance to comment on this at all yet. This is a new application for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a few questions and a few comments. You said I noted the usual frequency is 100 to 600 people. So I'm figuring that's a weekend thing. But these other events, which are quite large, the 1,000 to 3,000 and the 5,000 plus events, how often? You don't have to answer it this minute, but I'd like to know, get a better understanding of these maximum usages and not over planning for something that doesn't happen that often. So I'd like to know the frequency of the larger events. I don't know if you have the answer, and if you don't, I'll move on with the next question.
So the larger events happen pretty infrequently. I think currently we have twice a year being shown for the largest events.
Right.
And then I think 2 or 3 times for those medium-sized events being 1,000 to 3,000.
Right. So if it's half a dozen events a year that go beyond that 600 number, I just think we should be thinking about that as we look at the large-scale planning, and not make sure we're not putting too much impervious in or over designing. Although I think Victoria's comment on the plan for large gatherings is important. Variance for height. Maybe in everything I read, I just don't remember. What is the height at the peak of the roof and the height at the peak of the cross?
So The way that height is measured for the zoning code is actually kind of peculiar. It takes it from the middle point of the roof.
Yeah, or sometimes it's averages. No, I understand it's not a flat parcel.
Correct. Yeah.
So give me a point of reference and a height.
Maybe that's something that Stu, I mean, it's not fully designed yet, but maybe they can, Stu or Ken can just give a rough idea.
Yes, right, because I realize, you're going to go through this with the zoning board, but zoning board's going to ask for our opinion as well. So I kind of like to know how tall that is.
I should add that it's measured from an average of the lowest elevation to the top elevation, and then to the average between the peak.
This part.
Well, like in this elevation.
Yeah. Can you have those?
Section.
You have those figures now?
Hi, this is Ken. No, I the only dimension, because it's still a work in progress.
Okay, so it's a question you can answer in the future. I don't want to take more time now.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then some comments. I like the idea of shifting that parking north, but I also would like you to take a look at shifting it northwest. There's a triangle of unused land by the dotted phase 1 line. Yeah.
Yep.
That may be part of the solution. Something to look at if you need more parking or want to shift parking. And I also agree, looking down on that roof, maybe one of the ways to improve that visually is a sharper increased angle on that roof. It kind of looks in the drawing like it's a shed roof, even though it may not be. It's just, you just skip by it.
Nope. Okay.
That's the, go back to the other the first view. I think that it's actually that's a hip. The closest roof, there are various roof panels, and we've broken the roof up to try to
I appreciate
a little
that.
more interest in visual interest, and also help break down the bulk of the building. It is a large building.
Could you let know the one from Quaker Lane is the one I was looking at?
Oh,
that's it.
No, I guess it wasn't that one. What's the next one?
Yep. And this one.
Okay, I don't know. There was the next one.
And
okay, never mind. There was an image I'd seen that it looked like. Anyway, that was my comment. So I do agree, to improve that look, whatever you want to do to move it. Landscaping at the roads, we talked, okay, that's not shown yet, but there'll be screening. And I do like the bus drop-off concept where they'll be down below. So I want to comment on that as well. You mentioned catwalks inside. Are there going to be performances or special lighting or something that the community could use in future for performances? I heard you say catwalks, and that being a theater person,
there is in our program accommodations for for lighting and and media. And that is definitely part of our building program.
I think those were just some of my questions for now. Thank you.
Stephanie, before I let you go, can you offer a comment on the proposed architectural elevations? Because I know they were looking for that tonight, and we have.
Well, they were greatly improved over what we saw. I think when I first came on the board 2 years ago. I don't have, I think other members of the board will have some more specific architectural comments. Generally, I look at it, I like it. My comment was on the roof, and what that roof would look like at the intersection if it sits where it is now, looking down on the roof. That I was concerned about how that would look, but I think it looks quite nice. I don't have other objections to it. I don't want this to be construed as any improper statement, but the height of the building and then the height and size of the cross, I'm just kind of wondering about that. You come around the corner and it might be a little overwhelming, but I don't know.
Cross would not be.
I tread on that subject very carefully. I'm just giving you just an impression.
Cross would not be.
What?
Go ahead. Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Hi, so I have SK06 in front of me. I'm looking at that cross section or that diagonal. And when I measured it from
That one.
about, yeah, so when I measure from the base where the doors are up to the top of right below the cross, that's 93 feet. So then you need to add on additional, I can add additional feet for, let me get back to that SK06. If I go to the top of the cross, it's about 129.
Okay, that gives me some sense of it. And for general, rule of thumb purposes, even though we have varying grade, 1 story equals 10 feet. So that's almost 13 stories.
And before I let you go, Stephanie,
I'm
would
not
you
leaving.
also?
No, I'm going to stay. Well, it's fine.
No. Would you weigh in on the idea of whether you think that you are interested in trying to relax the standard for having all parking be behind the lot? I mean, behind the building. In other words, the parking that Liz, there you can see right up along the one that's along North Quaker. That's out.
I have more of an issue with the one to the north, even though you're talking about depressing a little bit and hiding it. I don't really, I need to look at landscape screening concept. If it's screened, I don't, it doesn't matter as much, right?
It's just that our code, one of the standards is that all parking should be behind the front building line. Tad would opine that this has 2 front building lines, I believe. One on North Quaker and the one on Crum Elbow.
I don't know. I honestly, I forgot about that. That there's 2 front, you construe 2 fronts on this. And I was really focusing on the other parking. I'm going to defer for the moment. I don't have a strong objection to it.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to think more about it.
Thank you. Ms. Weiser, comments?
Unmuting. I guess I'll just start on the parking. Since it is so far below grade and that we may not be seeing it from the street, I'm okay with that parking, although I wouldn't mind seeing the building, move a little bit north, just so that when we're looking at the view from northwest from the road, because it's so roof forward right there, if there's any way that, because you are moved further north, that it's just so that you sort of mitigate that expansive amount of roof would be helpful. And I see that this is a more fully realized version of what was submitted in 2017. And it was still I'm really glad that you guys revisited this and moved away from what we saw in 2018. But in general, I think the building is attractive. I'll look forward to more detailed elevations though as we move forward. I think that's it.
That was pretty comprehensive. And next, I'd like to hear from Mr. Pickett.
Thank you. Kind of looking at this, conceptualizing it both on the short and long term, when we're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 plus people, that's pretty sizable for Hyde Park. And I think we need to keep that up in the reviews that we have looking forward. One of the main concerns we've had in the past is safety with regards to traffic. And I think also the design of the stormwater, and they've seemed to address quite a bit of that. I think that's something that we'll keep a light on. I would like to have a site walk. The rheology of the land and the way it slopes and how they plan to fit that building, I'd kind of like to see where they would plant it, put 4 stakes in the corner and then maybe even, float a 93-foot balloon from where the approximate center is, just so we get an idea how everything would fit, both the building and the cross that's going to go on top. When we decide or look at relaxing the standards on the parking area, we can also get an idea how that fits in too, because again, with the plantings and the landscaping and the rheology, there's a lot that goes into that and how it fits with the building, hides it, and shows it. So I'd like to have a sidewalk. And I do like the building.
Thank you. And I believe that we can arrange a site walk. A bunch of us took one before when the sewage treatment plant was under review, or wastewater treatment plant, I should say. And they have site managers who are present at all times there right now, I know. Lovely people. But I'll ask for that formally in a bit. Thank you, Brent. Those were good comments as well. Ms. Dexter?
Yeah, it's hard to figure out where to start. This is such a tremendous improvement. A lot of thoughtful planning has gone into this. All right, so let me talk about the moving of the building. So it's a large building, it's articulated, it has, the land around it is different from one side to the next. So as I'm looking at it from that northwestern intersection, I'm only seeing a little piece of it. I think I'm only interested in moving the parking north if we need to add in something like a fire lane or something if it's required for safety purposes. I'm not sure moving it is going to accomplish that much that I can see. Plus they lose parking, which would, they've gone, I see a lot of work here to try to maximize whatever parking they can. So yeah, unless it's for like a safety reason, like, the fire department says we really need to get in there, so you have to move your building. I don't need to see that moved. Same kind of thing for the north parking. To me, that's going to be very similar to driving by the Culinary Institute. All of that parking that they have, it's hidden. You just don't see it. So I think the same thing is going to happen here. You might see the glint of sunlight on them maybe as you're driving by, but I don't think you're going to see that, especially since they're going to put some landscaping in there. So that's my thoughts on the building and the parking. Pete, thank you very much for pointing out about the sheet flow on that northern parking lot. I know you guys will work that out. I was looking at the narrative, and there they talk about the attendance for the events. Would that change once you have this beautiful large building? Would you have more events than what you're currently projecting?
So we've kind of deferred that one to the camp staff. Currently, these are kind of set events that they hold every year, more of a traditional base. If they were going, it really depends on once they get the building and kind of evaluate the use of whether or not they're going to add these more events in.
Right.
So again, that's kind of more of a camp question, but we could get back to you if they have any plans for expansion.
Well, again, it just kind of goes to the frequency of use at a very intense level.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So speaking from the camp's perspective, we won't, the whole idea of this is just to make everyone a lot more comfortable. Right now, we're using a lot more tents. So we're not intending on expanding the usage to maximize the facility, but we want to make sure that it is, the environment is acceptable for everyone when they do attend, that they have a comfortable spot to sit, and we could be of more use to the community also.
Thank you. That's excellent. Let's see, where's my next one? Oh, there's a piece here in the narrative on page 17 talking about getting the building variance. And again, it talks about where the elevations are being graded to. And so their calculations show that using our building height methods, they believe that they are going to need a 10-foot variance for the building height. noting that those other structures, the cross and the parapets don't factor in.
But did that apply to this new plan, or was that based on something prior? I guess that's a question for the architect.
That would be my question.
Those numbers are definitely going to have to be revised once we have a final building. So those are definitely something in flux at the moment. Just kind of like the parking area a little bit, and like when Pete and I had spoke, I told him because of the architecture and wanting it to be creative.
I'm on the planning board.
The plan right now that you're looking at shows this very straight 2 square or 2 rectangles together, this straight uniform building where once the architecture is a little further along, we will take that exact footprint and put it into here. So there's definitely a few things regarding the building, the perimeter around the building, and then the height of it are definitely, the numbers are in flux at the moment.
That makes sense.
But we do want to keep that variance number as low as possible. So, because we know that's, to go to a ZBA to not be asking for a variance that's just too much.
Right. And I think that also kind of plays into the placement of the building, that if you do nestle it into the land, it is not as high on all sides. Once you start taking the average, it's okay. And then I think my final question is, in the current plans, there are a couple of underground water storage tanks, 25,000 gallons. Will you be needing to, I'm assuming that's because when you do have your big events, that's your extra water so that you don't have to draw it all out of the ground. Would you be doing something similar? I don't see anything in this master plan. Of course, it could be hiding somewhere.
Yeah, no, we weren't showing for phase 1. We're not showing any improvements to the base water system or to the base wastewater system, because that water system, as you just alluded to, and what Deanna was saying before, is they have a certain amount of people that come here in the summertime as it is, but it's very spread out, and they put up large tents. And part of this project is to be able to have this one main building where everybody can get together, rather than that they're having a one kind of church program on one side and another program on another side, and maybe the youth program, and then there's the adult program. Well, in a building like this, they can bring everybody together, and then the adults can watch the youth choir, or the youth ensemble might be able to put on a production, and it makes for a full weekend. So inside the pavilion building, it'll be services, but then there's also a lot of different activities, and everybody can get together to see them. But for the water, the way that it works out is they have enough capacity because they're used to having this number of people there throughout the summer. And then the same thing on the wastewater. But what was discussed before is that this building is going to need a sprinkler system. So we will need to show some storage tanks someplace in the phase 1 site plan that would be added. And that water, those would be filled up, and the water would just sit there in the case of that the sprinkler system needs it.
Thank you very much. I'm just really pleased at how this is starting to shape up, and I thank you for the amount of detail that you've given us. Thank you.
And that was a great point, by the way, about the water storage tanks. Of course, it's always good points. I want to point out to everyone that at 61,000 square feet, this is roughly the size of, say, the Nisaki manufacturer, the old Stop and Shop. It's a little bit bigger. As Stephanie as Bonnie provided the information, that it's going to, depending on where you stand, it is going to feel tall. I personally, to echo on what Ann said, think that there's actually a lot of good articulation in the building. We did point that out last time, that the code requires any plane that's over 100 feet. So that does help break up the scale, but it is still a large building, as has been pointed out. Mr. Oliver, comments?
Yes, I have a few comments. In the northwest view from Quaker, in that picture, is the scale kind of accurate with how close it is to the road from that viewpoint?
Dang. Is this the correct view?
Yes, that's the view.
Yes. It is accurate to scale.
That's the
Okay,
south view.
yeah, that's, I had the wrong thing written down. So that distance from the road to the, I guess it would be the east elevation is fairly accurate?
Yes, it's a built-in, it's a 3D model, so it was modeled on the drawings from Rich and Peter.
Okay, in your ideas of moving the building north, would that get closer to Quaker or move away or not really change?
So it would just move alongside Quaker. So instead of this parking area right here, it would be, that's where the building would be rather than moving closer to the road. So it's just going to move north along or parallel to the road.
Okay, so bringing it kind of more down the slope would actually kind of pronounce the elevation more from that view, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. This would definitely, it would look closer to you if you were standing at this spot.
Okay.
This is Stu Markowitz. It's a real balancing act to try to get a little distance from the intersection without pulling it too far back, without losing too much parking, just enough to get some space and some distance from so that the roofs aren't quite so close.
My fear with that idea is by doing so, I think you're actually going to pronounce the scale even more and the size of the building even more from that viewpoint, where it might be better kind of tucked in the hill the way you have it. That's just my personal opinion. And then I really like, the architecture and the colors and the design, and I haven't seen the landscape plan yet, but one of my suggestions or ideas would be, rather than making rows of screening, maybe focus on clump plantings of large evergreens because it kind of has a lodgy feel to it with the architecture and the color, and it might, rather than completely hide the structure, kind of break up the viewpoints with larger plantings and have you can see through them differently.
Yeah, our thinking was to actually provide some evergreen screening along that side of the road. You can see in our planting plan, right along here. Right.
See how you have it in a row?
Yep.
I'm saying more like on the north end where you have the kind of pocket at the edge of the parking lot. Do a mass clump there of 6 or maybe 7 large evergreens, and then have a break in the planting where you have maybe a 30 or 50 foot view shed to see the building, and then have another clump of large mass plantings of evergreens, so that you can still see the beauty of the building, and it kind of lends itself to, rather than a linear line of screening,
more of a natural
broken up, because that's kind of the feel I get from the building.
Okay.
And then I think I kind of touched on the parking idea with, I personally wouldn't like to see it go farther north, because I think the building's going to look larger from looking south if you do that. And then going to the kind of the concept plan, if you can go back to that.
Are you speaking of the master plan?
Yes, master plan, sorry.
No worries.
So I agree with what Liz had brought up about the road being paved. I think having an unpaved road will create a lot of issues, especially since you're going to use the site year round. You're going to have structural issues, year round issues in the winter with snow and ice, trying to maintain the road, especially for buses and larger vehicles. And additionally, in the summer, you're going to have dust issues, especially with large gatherings of up to 5,000. I'd also like to point out, kind of on the master plan where you have that back road labeled as 24, right in that circle there.
In here? Yep.
Right near the overflow parking for the buses.
Oh, yep.
I think, yeah, the one up there.
Oh, yeah, sorry, this one. My mistake.
It looks to me like it's kind of for buses would be like a right only out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, we don't really intend for any of the buses to go beyond this being that we were kind of thinking of it more as a dirt and gravel road. Buses really wouldn't be suited to do large loops around the service
And
road.
then how would the buses exit the whole site?
So they could either come out through down here and then continue along here.
So they would go to the west, you're saying?
Come in here, just begin picking people up, or and this is actually something we could cover in our large event management plan as to the correct busing route, and that's something we can kind of analyze and explain out to you guys a little better.
I just think that where that road comes in off of Victory Lake Road.
Are you saying?
Right, yeah, right where you just were, back the other way. Right where it's labeled at Victory Lake Road, where it goes in. So if you can maybe make that so that it would be easier turning radius for, a bus if they want to leave the site that way. I think it's just in this stage, if you kind of constrict yourself so much that, it doesn't lend itself to future, growth.
Yeah, I actually think, listening to, I think that's actually a really good point. We should probably make it, or I'll take away the word probably, let's say definitely, make it so that the buses can swing some more of these corners a little bit easier. Because although we may all talk about it and envision something, somebody's going to get in that bus and they're going to decide how they think is the easiest way to go. And they're going to want to make the turn anyway. So we should think about that. I think it's
much easier to do it at this stage.
Yeah, it's a point well taken.
Mm-hmm.
And my final note about the size of the events, I think it actually might be good for Hyde Park. I mean, 5,000 people at an event, that's going to have a trickle down effect on a lot of local businesses. People are going to spend money doing other things. And so I'm glad to see that that's a possibility coming here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, before I let you go, I think that I need to have you weigh in on also the parking being in front of I think I know, since you don't want the building to move north and want to keep the parking, and you propose different kinds of landscaping, I think you're okay with having parking be in front of the building line? The parking
I don't know about that radius that connects the two parking lots right there, but if that could be shifted to the west, maybe 10 feet or 15 feet, it would give us more room for that kind of landscaping along Quaker. But I don't know if that turning radius there would allow that.
So you're kind of along where my cursor is, right? To just shift it.
I would almost want to see it shift more to the west, if you could, and line up the back line, if it would make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this would come flush with this, is what you're thinking.
I mean, that's what my eye sees, but it's just, and then that would give you more space and buffer between Quaker and the parking.
And what I'm thinking tonight, listening to all the comments, I'm picturing how we're going to rework the parking for drainage with Pete's comments, and then some board member comments, and then the possible trying to use that upper triangle. So I think what we might try to come back to you with is, once we incorporate the architectural footprint, is you might see from us, if we're a little unsure, you might see 2 concept plans, because I can already kind of picture maybe 2 potentially different ways to approach this.
That's quite all right. I promise you, Mr. Renia. And Ms. DiNapoli, comments?
Yes, I do. First, welcome back. It's nice to see you, and thank you for such a thoughtful plan. I find the architecture quite interesting, and I have the advantage of being last next to our chairman, but which means everything has more or less been said already. I do have a couple quick questions. On these plans, in the front of the sanctuary, on the side it says that the mechanics. closer to Crum Elbow, the darkened piece. Is that where you plan to keep all of your mechanics?
Yeah, we were thinking that that's where the outdoor mechanical, I mean, the HVAC system for the building hasn't been designed yet. But we know on a building this size that there's typically some sort of mechanical equipment like chillers. They have to basically, they look like more metal boxes and they pull a lot of air through them. And they're typically in a fenced-in area to keep people away from it. So we were thinking that that might be a good area to hide that type of mechanical equipment.
And seeing it from the road?
That's it goes downhill there, so that sits down from the road, and then we were proposing some landscaping as well. And we could, when we get in a little more detail, we could also look at maybe something screening with the fence. Although we do need airflow because we need airflow through. But yeah, that was our hope, is that it sits down much lower than the road, and we were proposing some additional tree plantings, landscaping up near the road.
Yeah. As you can see in this plan, this existing residence kind of sits up on the hill and then it comes down. So it should block it from view of the road, especially with supplemental landscaping.
Okay. Your lampposts, just that you be aware, and I think Liz has this in her notes, that they need to be all one color all the way down. There was a question when we were looking at your lighting plan. It looked like the base had pebbles.
Hold on, let me pull it up. Oh. So what were you saying about the base?
The base.
I think it's a rendition of concrete.
Yeah, it's a concrete hatch. So we're proposing to have basically a round extension of concrete, get it up above the parking area.
So you're going to have concrete and then you have the post on top?
Yes.
And we typically have them paint that black.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll add a leader to make sure it's painted black.
Yeah, so it's darker in color and it matches more to the post. It's just it seems like
it has to be all one color. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. And we like to have the concrete up out of the ground a little bit because somebody's going to hit it, a snowplow or the lawnmower person. It's just
flexible,
you know, and it just makes it a little bit of a sturdier design that way.
I thank you. I also agree it would be very helpful if you could stake this out. And I don't know if this is too cumbersome of a request to stake it out where you have it now, and then just add maybe 2 stakes where you were thinking of moving it. So this way we have a sense of, you know, the differences between both sites. And Brent's idea of a 93-foot balloon would be great, because as much as you try to imagine, it would be most helpful. Being able to walk around and then going up and down the 2 streets, seeing the visual of it.
Mm-hmm.
I commend you all for all of your hard work on this plan. I think it's going to be a great asset to our town, and we are very appreciative of that.
We're very excited to work with you guys on this too.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot, Michael, my comment about the parking. I am not vested at this moment one way or the other.
Okay. You and Stephanie then, thank you. So, Mr. Rennie and Mr. Sander, I promised you a hot bench and you got one tonight. I told you everyone would have read through very carefully. I really don't have that much to add myself. I will say only that the kind of use that's envisioned here, I think is a great one. I am personally, growing up in the South, I remember seeing big groups of people sitting at picnic tables underneath tents, and having, as I said, driven past this so many times over the years, I'm actually going to miss seeing a big crowd of happy people, smiling, laughing, kids running around. But at the same time, it's weather dependent. It's going to be much better this way to have it under one roof and to have different programmatic activities. So I understand what we're calling for here. I also personally am not, I don't really think I'm as disturbed perhaps as what other people are, even though it seems really large and massive, including at the height. I'm also aware that churches in general, places of religious worship, tend to be big buildings. Growing up in Louisiana, where we don't even have counties, we have parishes. Everyone's Catholic, like I was raised. We have different sized churches depending on the congregation. And this is used by a series of different churches across 5 states. So because of the use as it's proposed, I think that that's appropriate. I want to thank both the architects who are working on this, again, for doing a nice job, to me, a great job of articulating it, so that I think that it does really reduce down the sort of mass scale of it. I also think, having listened to my colleagues, that a site visit is called for. I'm not sure I think what we want to do is wait for them to stake it out when we have maybe the 2 concept plans that Mr. Renia mentioned.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's no rush to walk out there right now.
No.
I personally am, if you need to have the parking, Ms. Axelson pointed out that the drive aisles right now are 2 feet wider than what's required in our code. If the parking needs to stay front of the building line, I'm okay with it so long as it's also screened. I want to point out that I really like Chris's idea about clumping landscaping, because I don't love to see little marching soldiers up and down in a row. That noted, the board would need to make a sort of finding that sufficient screening would be accommodated by having intermittent views of the building, because as a point of fact, we are required to screen between residential and non-residential uses, and this is a non-residential use, and there are residential uses across the street. But that noted, I agree wholeheartedly with Chris. When I saw the building this afternoon, it has so much more pizzazz and than what was, well, let me just go ahead and point out, no offense to Rich and Peter, but the building we originally saw was more boxy, and it was just a design by Rich and Peter. It wasn't really done by an architect. This has been refined extensively. When I saw it,
and everybody knew that was just a placeholder at the
right,
time, just so we could
right,
get a location picked out.
Yeah, and so when I saw it, go ahead.
The architect, no comment on that.
No, but when I saw it today, I did, like Chris, have the idea that it felt very rural and sort of Adirondack in style, which seems appropriate for that area because it is very rural. And one of the reasons why I've always taken the Sub Point Turnpike exit off the Taconic and taken Crum Elbow is, when I'm coming from the city, it's actually a lot shorter to take a couple of other roads and go through Poughkeepsie, but it's not nearly as nice. This is a really beautiful way to approach Hyde Park. And I think this is going to be a nice addition to keeping it very pretty. I'll also point out, it's in I think, Ms. Axelson's comment memo, but you will need to show areas for snow storage. And beyond that, I recently saw a Facebook post by a resident who I believe commented that the planning board collectively had a big head, but I'm not going to care about that because I want to point out that it's a pleasure to lead this board as always, because all of you did a great job with your comments tonight. I think you've given very clear direction to the applicants and their consultants about what you're looking for, ideas for ways to improve the functionality, the layout, particularly with what Chris just pointed out about how buses are really going to flow in through there, because we will need to see turning radiuses to make sure that everything is adequate for that. But this is why it's fun. I didn't have to really add any more comments than the ones I just did, which are pretty brief, because all of my colleagues covered everything so thoroughly. Anybody else have any other comments before we conclude this application at the moment?
Oh, just to thank you. This is Stu Marcus again. Just to thank the board and thank you for your careful look at the plans, even though they are still very preliminary. But we hope to address your comments and continue to refine the design.
Which reminds me then also that in the first place, the cross, I defer to Ms. Moss, but I don't believe that the cross, since it's not usable space, would be included in the height of the overall structure. And again, to sort of look at the process, remember, we would be doing seeker and then approving a master site plan. As part of that, we'll be approving the phase 1 as well, I hope. But there may be some timing issues because once we can get seeker going on this, then I believe that we can maybe conclude that. We'll see how fast, but I hope quickly, because we've all identified traffic as being the most important. Although tonight I heard 2 members talk about a balloon test, so there may be some issue of visual impact. But the applicants, I believe, are already proposing ways to mitigate that by tucking it into the building or hiding it behind a higher elevation of ground, as well as proposing different kinds of landscaping. That noted, we will definitely need to nail down the location of the buildings and the different parking, et cetera, for phase one before we can approve that. But I look forward to this, and what we'll do is just, as soon as you're ready to submit revisions, then let us know. I do think that, as I said, the traffic impact analysis before we send it out should definitely have ITE numbers thrown in there, because you've also heard everyone talk about trying to nail down, if not precisely, but an idea of, the sort of maximum capacity. And I appreciate Ms. Deanna's comment that they're not looking to use anything new yet, but we should all consider when we're looking at potential impacts, what the future may bring. And as Peter said, it may be that there might be some more programming because, and certainly there'll be more frequency, because now other churches can use their congregation to rent it. Those won't be large events, but we never know once this is built. I think it's going to look really great. You may actually have more people coming in than just the congregation. You may have cousins, relatives, whatever. So that, since we identified traffic as the biggest concern, I think that's what we just need to kind of nail down as best we can, with the idea that we can always take a look in the future, the future site plans. As I said, if there are no other comments, then it's a pleasure working with you guys, all of you. And I'm sorry for the limitations that we have to undertake to do this by Zoom, but because I really prefer our first meetings on new applications, or rather significant applications, to be in person, but we can't do that right now. So we're going to keep on doing this until we have a high enough vaccination rate that we can start meeting in person again. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Hope to see you soon. And if you need any time, as you know, to contact us, feel free to do so. We try to respond by email as quickly as possible, as you have probably already seen.
Yeah, you guys rock at this. Very responsive. Always a really appreciate.
Can you tell that to the Facebook poster?
I'll make a post when I go home.
Tell them to go to some other planning board meetings too.
Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you as soon as you're ready. Stay safe. And
Thank
take
you,
care.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Great work.
Good
Night.
night.
And the last item on the agenda tonight is we're making a correction to the previous approval resolution for the Hyde Park Town Center Park Plaza. Tad pretty much quickly caught that she thought that there were two signs that were on the site plan that were too large. As it turns out, when she got the scale done correctly, they weren't. As you saw, she did a mea culpa and fell on her sword for us, writing us an email, even though you don't have to, Tad, for heaven's sakes. Little things like that happen all the time. So we're going to correct the prior resolution by pointing out that the two signs now are correct. And I believe this is going to be moved by Ms. Dexter.
That is correct. Resolution to amend Resolution 2020-15C entitled Resolution to Grant Site Plan Amendment Approval and Authorizing Issuance of a Temporary Certificate of Occupancy for Hyde Park Town Center Park Plaza Phase 2. Resolution number 2020-15D. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the first resolved clause of the resolution is hereby amended to delete the phrase "with the exception of those for CVS and Mid-Hudson Regional Early Learning Center," so that the zoning administrator may issue permits for said signs. Do I have a second?
Yes. I will second it because I've just realized Stephanie popped off to go to have a Zoom celebratory dinner. So I'll second. And any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And there's one extension because Ms. Wasser is not present for this. Thanks again to our consultants also for doing a very thorough job on evaluating Camp Victory Lake, because it is a big, big project. But I think everybody says it's an exciting one too. So there being no other business, may I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Chris Oliver.
Thank you.
Second,
There's-
Diane Knapple.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 Motion is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilman Krupnick, as always, for running our meeting on the technical
Yes,
aspects.
thank you, thank you.
And see everyone in a couple of weeks.
Night.
Stay safe. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.